Welcome to The Dairy Show. I'm Michael Croupain, and I'll be your guide as we discover where our food comes from. Specifically, we'll follow responsibly made dairy products from the grasses and the pastures to our plates and glasses. On episode 1 of The Dairy Show, we visited Dancing Ewe Farm in Granville, New York. There, Jody Summers showed us how he makes fresh and aged cow's milk cheeses using traditional Tuscan techniques. On today's special edition, we're in the Dairy Show kitchen, and we've got a wheel of Dancing Ewes aged caciotta, and we've got my friend Gina De Palma, who is the author of this book, Dolce Italiano, and the executive pastry chef at Babbo, and she's going to show us how she uses the cheese in the restaurant. So Gina, tell me about what we're going to make with the caciotta today.
Well, today we're going to use this beautiful wheel of cheese, and we're going to make fritters or frittelle, which are little fried little cheese puffs that we're going to serve with a bit of farm honey and fresh thyme like we do at Babbo.
What do you like about the caciotta?
Well, I love this cheese, and I loved it from the first moment I saw it because, first of all, it looks very much like something you would find in Tuscany. And it's very true to the Tuscan way of making a caciotta or a cacio, which is kind of a rustic farmhouse cheese. What I love about this is that you really taste the grasses that the cows eat. I know that Jody uses fresh milk from Jersey cows, and you really get that earthy kind of flavor. It really shines forth, and the texture is really easy for grating. It melts well and it eats well. There's really nothing you can do wrong with this. It's excellent.
Cool. How do we get started?
Okay, so we're gonna make these little fritters, right? Mm-hmm. They're almost like little savory beignets. We've got some oil heating up on the stove, and while that's slowly coming up to the right temperature, you're gonna cut a little bit of the cheese and grate it.
All right. Well, you were one of the first people to really sort of use Jody's cheeses, right?
I was. He dropped off a little sample of the ricotta actually to Mario Tali, my boss, and Mario tasted it and sent it over to me immediately and said, taste this stuff, it's amazing, and it was. So we were very impressed with the ricotta. We didn't even have any idea that he was making aged cheeses at the time. So I kind of jumped on the ricotta, and then immediately he told me about the caciotta, and I've been using it ever since. Why don't you cut a little wedge like that? We're gonna need 4 ounces of cheese grated.
All right.
That should be about right. So you know what, we would like to use this smaller grate size. You just want to get a nice fine grate on that.
Think that's enough?
Yeah, that's about enough. So now we're going to make our panade or our batter.
Okay.
Okay, so over here in a pot, I'm going to start out by putting some water in the pan, and I'm going to turn this on because we want to bring that to a boil. And we need butter, about half a stick. So I'm going to just put the butter in the pan. And then we need about a tablespoon of sugar. I can just eyeball it with my fingers here. I'm going to add a half a teaspoon of kosher salt and a few grinds of fresh black pepper, as much as you want. So this comes up to a boil, and you want to make sure that the butter is melted into it. And as soon as it's boiling, we have 3/4 cup of unbleached all-purpose flour. We're going to dump it in, all of it, all at once, and then immediately start to stir it into a paste. And you'll see how this kind of becomes a paste very quickly. This is actually the way that you make classic pâte à choux in French.
What do you call it in Italian?
Well, in Italian, they have a lot of words for everything, basically, but the most common thing to say would be beignet, which sounds a lot like beignet, actually, so there's no coincidence there. Now, all of that moisture from the water, we want to kind of cook out of the paste.
Okay.
So we want it to get a little bit dry. And the way that I do this is I like to smoosh it out on the bottom of the pan and then gather it back up into a ball.
This part we're doing now, the cooking of the flour and drying it out, is this what makes it puffy?
Yeah, exactly. So you have to be careful to cook out this dough that you've created, because otherwise you're going to wind up with like little lumps of lead, and they're not going to puff up nice and airy and light.
Okay. How do you know when it's done?
Well, you know when it's done when it's doing what it's doing here. See how it's coated the bottom of the pan? That's pretty much a signal that it's done. And then I also test a little bit with my finger. If it holds its shape, which it's doing, and it feels dry, it doesn't really feel wet,
Okay.
You know that you're done. So this is finished. And next we're gonna go over to the mixer.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, let's do it.
All right, so now that we've dried that out, what I'm gonna do is try to get that in one glop in the mixer. And then the first thing you wanna do is turn the mixer on to kind of release all of that pent up heat. You see the steam that's rising? You definitely want to get that heat dissipated before you start adding your cold eggs. You're gonna crack your eggs into the recipe one at a time, but since we all know how easy it is to get an eggshell,
Sure.
what you wanna do is have a nice bowl ready to crack your eggs into one at a time. So I'm gonna start with the first egg. All right, now I know I don't have any shells in it. And I'm gonna add that in and let that work its way into the mixture. And you don't want to rush this process. You want each egg to be completely incorporated into the batter before you add the next one.
Okay.
Okay? So that is pretty much absorbed. See, there's a reason why we crack it into a bowl first. And you're going to add the next egg. And sometimes how many eggs you need varies depending on the size of the eggs. If you're doubling this recipe and making it for a crowd, you might need 4 eggs one day, you might need 6 eggs the next. It depends on the size of the eggs because they're different every day.
Sure.
Food is different every day. I always try to tell people that when they fret about measurements and ingredients. It's really almost, the recipe is a guide. You should kind of understand how to do things by sight because food is different every day.
So what are we looking for?
We're looking for a glossy sheen to the batter, and it should fall from the beater in a nice kind of ribbony motion.
Okay.
So we're not there yet. It still looks pretty thick. This last egg should do the trick, but if it doesn't, we have another egg in case I want to add another egg. And then I feel the side of the bowl, the side and the bottom, to see what temperature it is. And if it feels cool to the touch, if it's not warm anymore, then I know that that's where we want to be, because you don't want to have any heat left in this, because when you add the cheese, it'll just melt. You don't want to do that. You definitely want this to be cool. Take it off and test it. Let's take a look. It's glossy. It's not really falling though, right? So what I'm going to ask you to do is get another egg.
Sure.
And I'm not entirely sure that this needs a whole other egg. But why don't you grab me a fork from the drawer over there, and we will beat this up a little bit, because we want to add this gradually. We may not need the whole thing.
Okay.
So I'm going to bring the arm up again. I'm going to add a little bit more of this egg, not all of it, and beat that in and see if that gives us what we want. That looks a lot better, right?
Okay.
Because it's smoother, it's glossier, and it's a little lighter in color. So I think we've got the right amount of egg right now. You can see how this falls from the beater, like I was talking.
Okay.
And it makes like a nice ribbon on top of itself. Next, I'm going to add a little bit of baking powder to this, because we want to get that little bit of extra oomph.
All right.
So it's a really small amount. It's just 1/4 of a teaspoon.
So that's what helps it to rise or puff?
Yeah, exactly. It's going to rise and puff anyway because of the eggs, but this just kind of gives it a little bit of extra puff power. Once we've got that beaten in, we're actually ready to add the cheese. So why don't you go ahead and dump the grated cheese in. And then we have a couple tablespoons of grated Parmigiano Reggiano, or you could use Pecorino Romano or Grana Padano, whatever you have on hand. Okay, so we're gonna add a couple tablespoons of that. All right, so the dough at this point is done. At Babbo, we make this during the day, and then we fry these to order at night.
Okay.
So this will hold.
Okay.
You can either fry them to order for your guests, for your dinner party, or you could put it in the refrigerator to hold it for a longer period of time, whatever you need. You know what? I need to use my fingers for this.
Yeah, I was going to recommend that you use your fingers.
Good.
You could also bake these, I imagine.
You could, like gougere, like traditional gougere. I think that would work because that's basically what this is. I like to fry them. They love to fry things in Italy. It's a big frying culture. Because, they fry things over there in olive oil. We're afraid over here to use olive oil. And while you don't want to use the extra virgin stuff, if you fry in olive oil, you get the flavor of that olive oil in there, and it's exactly what you want. So we have our batter done and ready to go. And we've heated about 4 to 6 cups of olive oil in a nice heavy pan like this one. And it's just starting to smoke. That's what we want. We want it somewhere around 350, 360.
Okay.
Okay? And you can use, to shape these, a little tiny ice cream scoop if you have it. But I like to do it old school style with 2 teaspoons.
Okay.
So I just get a little spoonful of it. And then with the other spoon, kind of just push it off. And it doesn't make perfect rounds. It kind of makes them irregular, but I don't know about you, but I like that. I don't know why, symmetry kind of turns me off.
Really?
Yeah.
I kind of like things
At least
symmetrical
in food.
and
you
perfect.
do?
Really? I guess that's, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Fry about 5 or 6 of these at a time, I'd say. So these kind of, as you see, they flip themselves a little bit. And you just want to keep doing that as they cook as well until they get that nice golden quality. So these are getting nicely colored. And it's amazing, they didn't go in looking very
No, but they
symmetrical.
look pretty perfect right now.
But they kind of turn themselves into little balls, which is neat. So I think one by one I'm going to start taking these out because they're starting to get that nice golden brown color. Okay, so now we're going to plate some of these up. And I really like these with honey because I love the savory sweet combination. So this is a really lovely honey. I believe you got this from Stone Barns?
Yep, they make it there on the farm.
Okay, so I'm going to take a spoonful of honey and I'm going to make a little dot of it on the plate just to hold them. This makes a great cheese course, except it's not cheese. It's a cheese-ish course.
Sure, it's part cheese.
Exactly, let me put that there. And so then, these are a little hot, so which is the way you want to serve them. You could do 3 of them like this. And now, would you like to make me some little shavings?
Okay.
Okay, so they're sitting on top of the honey, and then I'm going to get another spoonful of it and drizzle it over the top. Maybe a little bit around. That's pretty.
Is this enough cheese?
Yeah,
for
that's
you?
plenty. So then what we'll do is I like to take a few shavings, pretty little shavings like this, and kind of put them in the middle like that. And then I've got some fresh thyme from my mom's garden.
Cool.
So, and you could use any herb that you like, but I like thyme with this. And that's our plate. So, Michael, if you wanted to translate this little fussy presentation into something that's a little more party friendly, what you could do is you get a nice little passed hors d'oeuvre plate.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
We're all about parties at the dairy show, so.
We are. Who doesn't love a party? And cheese. Cheers.
Cheers. They're really delicious. They're very light and cheesy, and I really love the honey. It gives them sort of that nice sweetness that I'm not used to with a cheese puff.
Exactly, and you can play with the flavors with the herb and the type of honey.
Cool. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for showing us how to make them.
Thank you for having me, and I wish Jody was here.
On episode 1 of the Dairy Show, we went to Granville, New York to Dancing Ewe Farm. There, Jody Summers shows us how he makes. All right, one more time.
Am I making you nervous?
No.
Do you want me to go away?
No, you stay here. You're not making me nervous.
Okay.
Summers shows us how he takes cow's milk cheese. I was doing. Okay, let's start again.
I see it now.
See what?
Check.
That was pretty good.
It was pretty good. It
Okay.
was very good. It's hard boiled.